So good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Surrogacy and IVF live webinar, and appreciate for everybody's participation. My name is Miranda, International Patient Coordinator of Global Fertility and Genetics. So today we will have three speakers to give us a presentation. First one will be myself. Second one will be Rich, our attorney from International Fertility Law Group. The third speaker will be Dr. Zeitoun, Endocrinology Specialist of Global Fertility and Genetics. So if you have any questions, you can post your question to the chat box. We will answer it later. So let me introduce the surrogacy process first. So if intended parents would like to work with the surrogacy, so the first step is to match with your surrogate. So intended parents usually fill up your questionnaire and send 3 to 4 photos to agency. Then the agency will send intended parents a few profiles to review. You could see the background, education, occupation, medical history, family pictures, and the compensation from your from the profile. So choose the one you want to work with. Then the surrogacy representative will set up a conference call for all parties. If you like each other, it means this match is confirmed, so we can move to the next step. Next step is escrow account setup. So the escrow company and the attorney could set up your escrow account. So this money will be used for the surrogate's future expense. For example, the screening cost, the travel expense, the monthly compensation, and etc. So the next step is collecting the reports. So the agency usually arrange the criminal background check, home study, and the agency also arrange the psychological evaluation report and is conducted to determine the emotional stability of the surrogate. IVF clinical will collect all the medical records. The next step is surrogate pre-screening. So IVF clinical will do the consultation for the surrogate, medical evaluation, uterine study, sonogram, physical exam, STD blood work, and urine screening, pap smear, and right now especially we do COVID-19 test before the transfer. And after all this test done, we will issue a medical clearance letter to the agency. So the next step is very important, is legal contract. So usually intended parents will hire an attorney for themselves and also hire an attorney for the surrogate. Next step is the attorney draft the contract and then review the contract with intended parents, and also surrogate review the contract with her attorney. So if all the parties agreed with all the terms in the contract, then they will assign the final contract and get it notarized. Then the attorney will issue a legal clearance letter and send it to the IVF clinic. It means your surrogate could start her medications. And before the transfer, the very important thing is to purchase surrogacy insurance. So there's open enrollment period. Usually submit your application between November 1st to December 15th. The cost approximately is almost like $600 each month. And the other option is if you submit your application out of the open enrollment period, the cost of the insurance could be over or approximately $20,000. So the next step is surrogate frozen embryo transfer cycles. It's usually surrogate take approximately 30 days of medication injection, and after the transfer, she will do a blood test of HCG to confirm her pregnancy, and then do the ultrasound to confirm her heartbeat. So the surrogates will be released to the OBGYN around the 10 to 8 weeks pregnancy, and upon instruction from the IVF clinical, she will be able to stop all medications. So the estimated cost total cost of surrogacy is around 120,000 to 140,000. This fee includes agency fee, legal fee, insurance fee, and the surrogate compensations. So this is the process of the surrogates. And if you have any questions, you can follow us on our Facebook, Instagram, and thank you. So I will right now introduce Rich. Rich is a very experienced attorney who works in international fertility law group. He is a very experienced attorney in surrogacy, and he also have his baby from surrogacy. So he will give us an introduction of surrogacy law process and the parental rights. Okay, let me turn the camera to attorney Rich. Okay, so Rich, you can share your screen.
Okay. You have to enable screen sharing, it says.
Okay, let me see. Let me share. Stop share. Okay, you can share yours right now.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, hi, everybody. Thank you for having me today, Miranda. I want to talk to you about the legal process for surrogacy in the United States. As you may know, the United States is widely accepted as the best place in the world for surrogacy. We have the legal foundation to protect the parties, and we have some of the best medical in the world. Now, surrogacy law in the US is state by state. It is not a federal law. So each state sets its own rules and procedures on how to go through surrogacy and how ultimately to establish the intended parents as the legal parents. How and when we go to court and how the court orders are issued will vary a little bit from state to state, but what I'll cover today are the basics and sort of the universally accepted principles and procedures. Now, ultimately, in a surrogacy case, our objective is a court order, and the court order is necessary to establish the intended parents as the legal parents, because the law otherwise would assume that the surrogate, the person carrying and delivering the baby, is the mother. So we need to go to court to get a court order to rebut that presumption. So that's our ultimate objective, and there are several things that we do to get ready to go to court in a surrogacy case. The first is going through a contract process with your surrogate. Now on the slide here, you may see that I've mentioned egg donation agreements and surrogacy agreements. So if you're using an egg donor, you'll need a contract as well. I'll focus my comments today, however, on just the surrogacy agreement. So after you've matched with a surrogate and the doctor has medically screened and cleared your surrogate, that is the time to start working on a surrogacy agreement between you and your surrogate. Now, these documents are template-based. We've been doing this since 1992, over 30,000 cases, but we do customize the contracts to the specifics of each case. So what will typically happen is we will get the details of your match sent to us by your surrogacy program, and we will incorporate those details into the contract. You will see the contract draft first, and after we've explained it to you and you are comfortable with it, we will send it to your surrogate's attorney. She is required to have a separate attorney in this process, and they will review the contract with her. They will let us know if they have any changes that we should be discussing with you, and then we will finalize the contract after all parties have agreed on the changes. This process takes about 3 to 4 weeks, and at the conclusion of that process, we send a legal clearance letter to the doctor to let the doctors know that your contract is done, and at that point, the doctor can start your surrogate on her injectable medications. Now, in the contract, in terms of the content of the contract, I'll skim over this fairly quickly for you, but of course, we cover the surrogate's fees and expenses as outlined by the surrogacy program. We will address her health insurance, and we will address the escrow account in terms of how much money you need to put in, at what point in time, what is the minimum balance requirement, and how long you have to keep the account open. We will touch on the issues of your surrogate's conduct during the pregnancy, basically that she agrees to follow doctor's orders, submit to any tests that are needed, and to keep you updated on the progress of the pregnancy. But one of the main functions of this contract is to establish that you are the intended parents and that she is not an intended parent. The contract alone can only establish intention. It cannot, by itself, give you parental rights. That's what the court order is for. So that's, again, that's our ultimate objective, is the court order in these cases. So to supplement the contract and give you some way to protect your parental rights during the pregnancy, the next step in this process is guardianship documentation. And I should also just clarify that this court order that we will ultimately be obtaining in your case, it is not effective until at the very earliest, the moment that the baby is born. And in many cases, we may get the court order signed by the judge during the pregnancy, but it's not effective until the baby's born. So this means that during the pregnancy, you really don't have parental rights. Now, of course, this is your baby, and it's your pregnancy as well. So we want to do something to give you the equivalent of parental rights, and that's where these guardianship documents come into play. In this particular phase of the legal work, we will have the surrogate appoint you as the intended parents as guardians of the baby, so that as a guardian of the baby during pregnancy, you have the right to speak directly to her OB, to access her pregnancy records, to be present at any of the healthcare visits, whether it is in person or electronically by Zoom or FaceTime or WeChat, etc. And it also gives you the right to make medical decisions. Now, keep in mind that the surrogate is the patient as far as the obstetrician is concerned. And the obstetrician has a duty to his or her patient, and including a duty of confidentiality. So all of her medical information regarding the pregnancy really cannot be shared with you unless she's given permission. And so this document that she's signing, giving you a guardianship and a healthcare power of attorney, is the document that gives the doctor permission to speak to you. And this will also protect you and give you the same rights at the hospital as well. Now, there's a second component to these guardianship documents, and that is that after naming you as the primary guardians, the surrogate will also be listing your choice of 2 backup guardians. And these are backups to you in case something happens to you, in case you die or become incapacitated and you have a child on the way. Who's going to care for the child? So we need to put this in writing as to who would come next if you're not available. And we also will, in that regard, put some documents together that you sign where you officially nominate your backup guardians. And we would like you to be thinking about not only permanent guardians in case you die or become incapacitated, but also temporary guardians, in case you are temporarily unavailable, or for instance, are restricted from traveling because of COVID or some other pandemic. So it's important to think about not only permanent guardians, but also temporary guardians. So that's the guardianship phase of the process. And then as you'll notice in the slide, the next step is this court process that I have mentioned before. This is a process that we will start at 14 weeks of pregnancy. And at 14 weeks of pregnancy, that's when we are, you're out of the first trimester. Most miscarriages occur in the first trimester. So at that point, the pregnancy is stable, and that's when we start getting ready for court. And what we'll do at that time is send questionnaires to you and your surrogate and your doctor. And we use those questionnaires to gather information that we need so that we can draft your court documents. We will also schedule a call with you at that time so we can go over this in more detail. But generally speaking, these court documents will be put together to explain to the court that we have an agreed situation. This is not a situation where you are suing the surrogate, or we need the court to declare a winner or a loser, or someone's right, someone's wrong. This is a fully agreed petition to the court to explain to the court that this is a surrogacy. There's a surrogacy agreement. Everybody wants the same result. We all agree to the facts of the case, and we actually have all parties sign off on the court order that we will present to the court to sign. So everybody has reviewed and approved the court order before we give it to the court. And so in this process, we gather the information for these court documents in the 4th month. We draft the court documents in the 5th month. We email them to everyone to print, sign, and return. And the good news is that the vast majority, let's say 98% of the states, do not require you to be present in court, and all you'll need to do is sign these documents. Then we get the case filed with the court in the 6th month of the pregnancy, and by about week 28, give or take, we usually have a pre-birth order signed by the court. Now, there are some states that require us to go to court only after the birth has occurred. We will still begin getting ready for your court case during the pregnancy, and we will still be talking to the hospital. So at 28 weeks, if we have the court order, or if we don't, we will be talking to the birth hospital. And we start planning with them to make sure they have everything that they need, that they have, if they have any questions, we've answered all of their questions. If they need any other documents, we have plenty of time to get those documents to them so that when the birth does occur, everything has been worked out and everything would run very smoothly. Now, if you happen to be, your surrogate happens to be in a state that is a post-birth state where we cannot go to court until after the birth, that's another reason why these guardianship documents that she has signed will become very important, because these documents will allow you to do everything that you need to do in the hospital as any other parent would. So at the birth, the hospital will take the court order and attach it to their birth certificate worksheet, and they will send that off to the state vital records office. So if we have the court order already, that gets sent out within a couple of days. If we need to go to court after birth, we have the hospital hold their paperwork for a few days while we get the court order in place. And from there, the process is the same. The state vital records office will produce the birth certificate. If you are a domestic US intended parent, the birth certificate will be mailed to you. If you are from outside of the US and need to return home, then you need the birth certificate to be expedited, and we can usually get those birth certificates expedited in about 2 weeks or less from the date of birth. There are some variations on that from certain states, but generally it's about 2 weeks after birth when we get the birth certificate for you. And then once you have the birth certificate in hand, you can apply for the child's US passport, which in non-COVID times will take about 3 to 5 business days at the most on an expedited basis. During COVID right now, it's a little bit longer, but we don't expect that to last forever. After you have the birth certificate, if you are someone who resides outside of the US, you may also need to visit your local home country consulate for other travel documents. For China, for certain countries, it's required that you go to the local consulate and register with them before you return home. But we will walk you through each step of that all the way through from beginning to end, and you'll never have to worry about remembering all of these things. That's what we're here for. So that's really it. And just a very quick summary, you start with escrow accounts, as Miranda mentioned. Then you do contracts once the surrogate has been medically cleared. After the contracts are done, we turn our attention to the guardianship documents. And then starting at 14 weeks, we begin getting ready for the court process. We generally have a court order by the 28th week. We communicate with the hospital to make sure everything's going to run smoothly at birth. And then after the birth occurs, birth certificates are generally available in about 2 weeks or less, and then you can handle the other paperwork. If you need to return home to another country, it's typically about 3 to 4 weeks after birth that you'll need to be here to take care of all of that paperwork. Okay, that's it. Thank you. And
Thank you, Rich. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Let me get it off of sharing here.
Yeah. So our next speaker is our Dr. Zeitoun, reproductive endocrinologist specialist who have over 30 years of experience. So he will give us an introduction of IVF and the surrogate. Let's see. Share screen. You could see our screen, right? Reach. Okay.
Could you put it on presentation?
Like this.
Right. Hello, hi. I'm going to go through a little bit of the medical aspects of infertility and surrogacy and what decisions we need to think about when we do these cases. Right now, we have about 1 in 6 couples that suffer from infertility and need some medical help to have a baby. This number is increasing because of many reasons. One of the main reasons is trying to have babies later in life. Infertility means that there's a couple who's trying to get pregnant without contraception for a year or more. These are some of the causes, traditional causes for infertility. You can see that the sperm problems are a significant percentage of infertility patients. There are also a significant percentage, about 20%, that's unexplained infertility. This means that all our tests were normal, but still the couple has difficulty in getting pregnant. Then there are patients who don't ovulate, having a problem. There are patients with obstructed tubes. There are patients with endometriosis, and there are also patients with a problem with the uterus. And the uterine problems sometimes will need a surrogate if they are very severe. There is a new category we're dealing with these days more and more, and this is patients needing help getting pregnant, but not really traditional infertility patients. They did not try for a year to get pregnant. Many of these are same-sex couples, either females or males, or single parents who want to have a baby. So these are patients that did not try for a year to get pregnant, but still will need help having a baby. These are some of the options for infertility treatment. For example, a patient that does not ovulate, we try to induce ovulation or make the ovary grow an egg every month and ovulate this egg to have a chance to get pregnant. The second most complicated is intrauterine insemination or artificial insemination, where we do stimulate the ovary to make eggs, but also we will put the sperm into the uterus at the time of ovulation to help with the process of getting a baby. In vitro fertilization is well known, and in this case, we will actually extract the egg outside of the body, and we will fertilize this egg in the lab, and we will grow the embryos in the lab before we put them back into the uterus. There are some patients treated surgically for infertility, like patients with fibroids. Traditionally, patients with obstructed tubes, we do some surgery for them, but this is mostly these patients use IVF these days. Some patients need surgery not only to prepare the uterus, but also to remove, for example, tubes with hydrosalpinx, which is a tube that's blocked and accumulating fluid that can go back into the uterus and prevent the pregnancy. Last but not least is surrogacy. And surrogacy is having a gestational carrier to carry the baby for the patient or for the couple during the pregnancy. In this case, the intended parent's embryos will be transferred to the uterus of a gestational carrier, to the surrogate, and she will carry the baby through the pregnancy, and she will also deliver the baby at the end of the pregnancy. Why does somebody need a surrogate? Factors with the uterus, if there's a problem with the uterus, if some patients, for example, are born without a uterus. Some patients might have surgery on the uterus and it needed to be removed for some reason, including cancer. And we have a lot of cancer survivors these days that may want to get pregnant later on. The uterus might not be functioning well. And many times we can correct a uterus like that with surgically, but there are some cases which are very severe, like severe scarring, multiple fibroids in the uterus, and this uterus will not be able to carry the baby safely. A woman can have difficulty carrying a pregnancy because she has severe medical conditions like heart conditions that puts her at severe risk if she has a pregnancy and delivery. Also, some women will suffer from multiple miscarriages, and some of these miscarriage cases can be treated medically or surgically, but some of them are not easily solvable and will need a surrogate. Same-sex couples, if we have a gay couple, male gay couple, we will not have a uterus available in this family, so we will need a surrogate to carry the baby. And some patients use surrogacy because of personal reasons, not wanting or not able to carry a pregnancy. The first step in this process is probably decision. That is the most difficult hurdle, to make a decision what to do. Like a decision if we're going to use a surrogate or not, if we're even going to go through this process. Then there will be other decisions after we decide to go with a surrogate, which is which egg to use, what type of egg. Are we using the egg of the partner or the wife or the girlfriend or so, or are we using an egg from a donor because we cannot use the partner's egg? Again, what sperm to use? If we're going to use a partner sperm, or if we're going to use donor sperm, or if there's a same-sex couple, which one will give the sperm, if it's the one or the other, or maybe mix the sperm together, which can be done also. After this process, we need also to choose a surrogate, and that's the matching process to the surrogate. The surrogate will have also some right to choose the couple, and the couple will need to choose a surrogate that they're comfortable with. We need also to make some decisions about other procedures during the assisted reproductive cycle or the IVF cycle. There are some different procedures that can be done during the cycle, and we need to make a decision if we're going to do that or not. So in matching a surrogate, usually we will have a surrogacy agency. We will have Rich Vaughn there to help us through the process. We will have to have an attorney to help us through the process. But the surrogate and the patients have to choose each other. And that's the matching process. The matching process might be very simple, that the patient wants just a healthy surrogate that will carry their baby, but sometimes some couples will are more specific, and they will look at race, they will look at religion. Cost is very important. These are cycles that cost over $100,000 usually. The distance between the surrogate and the patient, if it's easy for them to reach the surrogates, to see her, and this depends on the degree of involvement the couple wants to have with the surrogate, or the intended parent wants to have with the surrogate. The surrogate will also have a say in the matter if she wants to carry the baby for that couple. If she will accept married couples only, if the surrogate will accept the same-sex couple or a single parent. We're dealing with human beings here, and everybody has his own beliefs and preferences. So we have to have a match this, the intended parents to the surrogate, and everybody has to be comfortable in this process. Part of the matching process is also to talk to the surrogates about what she will accept during the pregnancy. and what she will not accept during the pregnancy. And this is very important. Sometimes the baby will have medical problems or genetic problems, and the intended parents will choose to abort this pregnancy because they are afraid that the baby will have a problem. And the surrogate has to be comfortable with that. Fetal reduction is also an issue. Usually we will try to make a pregnancy with only a singleton pregnancy with only one baby in the uterus. Sometimes the couple and the surrogate will opt to put more than one embryo, which usually we do not advise. Sometimes one embryo will divide into two. And in this case, we need to have a good understanding with the surrogate if she will accept the fetal reduction, which means to reduce the pregnancy from 2 to 1, for example. There are some invasive procedures during the pregnancy that might be needed to diagnose problems with the pregnancy, and the surrogate has to be comfortable with that, including amniocentesis or CVS, chorionic villus sampling, where we take a sample from the placenta to diagnose some problems with the baby. So these are things that will be discussed always with the surrogate before the cycle. If the surrogate will accept the parents to be there at delivery, and usually they do, but this also has to be discussed, and also the degree of involvement of the parents with the surrogates. If the patient needs a cesarean section during delivery or an operative delivery, if it's advised by the physician, will the surrogate agree to that? And all these are important points to go over with the couple and the patient before the match is complete. This is the procedure to obtain the eggs and make the embryo in the lab. We first need to stimulate the ovary of the partner or of the donor to grow the follicles, which are the bags of fluid which contain the eggs. And when the eggs are mature, we will retrieve the eggs. And this is a process done under heavy sedation. The eggs will be given to the lab. They will be fertilized with the chosen sperm. And then the embryos will be growing in the lab, usually for 5 days, before we can transfer them back to the surrogate's uterus. This is just how the embryos look after the fertilization. So on the left-hand corner, the upper left-hand corner, this embryo is just the day after fertilization, where you have 2 nuclei. This is a fertilized egg. Second day, the embryo will start to divide and will be 2 cells here, and then 4 cells, 8 cells. Between 4 and 8 cells will be about day 3 later on. The cells will increase in number. We cannot count them here. We call this a morula, which is a big bunch of cells inside the shell. And then after this morula will start making a cavity inside, which we call a blastocyst. This is here the embryo on day 5. This is the embryo we like to see on day 5, which is a blastocyst, an embryo with this fluid-filled cavity. This part of the embryo will make the baby, and the outer part will make the placenta. So this is the embryo we'd like to see at this stage before transfer. This is how we return the embryos into the uterus. We usually use sonogram during the process of the transfer or returning the embryo. You can see on the upper part the bladder. Usually we want a full bladder. We look from the belly with the sonogram, and we have the uterus down there. And you can see this white line is the catheter containing the embryos. We actually will introduce it while we're watching on the sonogram machine, and we will place the embryos exactly in the uterine cavity where it has the highest chance of implantation. The embryos can be from different sources. The egg can be from the intended mother and the intended father's sperm. The intended mother's egg can be also fertilized with donor sperm. For example, if the mother is a single mother and she wants to have a baby. Some patients will use a donor egg with the intended father's sperm, or they will use both donor egg and donor sperm. There's also donated embryos can be used to be transferred. So these are embryos that are usually made from other couples, so the extra embryos that are not used. And some of the couples will donate their embryos for patients who have problems, and they can use them to have a pregnancy and a baby. When do we use a donor egg? Or why do we use a donor egg? Every woman is born with all her eggs. Actually, the maximum number of eggs a woman has is the time she's still in the womb. The eggs already start to get less and decrease before birth. At puberty, you can see how the egg number is decreasing slowly at birth. At puberty, here around puberty, the egg number has significantly dropped. After this, there is a decrease all through your life till you go to menopause. Every month, a woman will have 1,000 eggs grow and degenerate, and only one egg, usually in a normal cycle, will ovulate and give us a chance to have a baby. If the eggs number is not enough, if the eggs are finished, then we will not be having an egg from this person, and we'll have to use a donor egg. Not only do the eggs decrease as you get older, but also the egg quality. The egg quality means that the chromosomal complement of the egg is not normal. The percentage of abnormal eggs will increase dramatically as you get older. And that's one reason to need a donor egg. So donor egg is usually used in women that are older, especially over 40. Some women have, for some genetic reason, poor egg quality. Poor egg quality, if the patient went through multiple IVF cycles, we never can get a normal embryo or a good quality embryo to implant. We might need to resort to donor egg. Some women will go to menopause earlier than the expected age. This might be because of medical problems like chemo or radiation, or it might be genetic. Also, donor egg will be needed in same-sex couples. If both of them are males, then we will have no ovary available. So we will have to use a donor to obtain an egg and make a baby. The donor will undergo an IVF cycle. The eggs will be fertilized with the chosen sperm, and then the recipient mother or the surrogate will carry the baby. Right now, we have a lot of other options with donation. There are egg banks that have frozen donor eggs. And so you have the eggs already ready. You don't need to stimulate the donor again. And a lot of couples will buy frozen eggs from the egg bank. Again, decisions regarding the sperm. Are we using the partner sperm? Which partner? Are we using donor sperm? So all these decisions will need to be made before we proceed with the cycle. Again, the surrogate, after we choose the surrogate, we have to make sure that the surrogate is suitable medically to carry the baby and that there are no other problems. We usually would want a surrogate that had a baby before without problem and no medical problems during pregnancy. We look at the weight of the surrogate. Usually we want a BMI between 18 and 35. We look at the age. We want the age to be between 21 and 44. In some very experienced surrogate, the age we might be a little bit more flexible with the age, but probably this is between 21 and 44 is a good age to keep the surrogates in. both intended parents and the gestational carrier will undergo psychological education and consultation, so they know what they're looking at and what they will go through during these, the surrogacy cycle and the pregnancy. These procedures will be stressful not only for the intended parents, but also for the surrogate. The intended parents will also have to be screened because we need to make sure that the surrogate is safe. So the egg donor will have to be screened to make sure she doesn't have any problems, or the sperm donor, and everybody has to pass these screening tests. One example of a screening test is the STD test or some of the genetic tests. This is how the process will go with the surrogate. We will have a consultation. We will go through all these issues that we discussed. We will have a medical evaluation. Medical records will be looked at, especially records of previous pregnancies or surgeries. We will have to make sure that the uterus inside is normal and there are no problems that will prevent pregnancy, like polyps or fibroids. We have to make sure that the passage from the cervix into the uterus is easy. And for this, we do a test called the saline infusion sonogram, or SIS, where we inject some fluid into the uterus to make sure that the uterus is normal. The surrogate will undergo a full physical exam. We look at the heart, lung, we do a breast exam, we do a gynecological exam. We also look for tattoos or piercings to make sure there are no recent tattoos or piercings that can give us a problem. The STD workup has to be done. Urine will be usually screened for drugs. We have to make sure the surrogate is healthy. Apart from that, we have to do pap smears. And if she's older than 40 or needs a mammogram, she has to have a mammogram. Nowadays, before the transfer, in the transfer cycle, we do a COVID test to make sure that the surrogate doesn't have any infection before the transfer. And this is incorporated in our protocols now, and it is recommended by the Department of Health. If everything is good, then the surrogate will get medical clearance to start the cycle. Usually when we have a surrogacy pregnancy, we want a singleton pregnancy. We want only one baby in the uterus. Many people can carry twins, but twins do have a higher rate of complications, both for the mother and the babies. Some surrogates might accept carrying twins, and this is usually incorporated in the agreement between the surrogate and the parents. It's something we need to talk about. But we usually prefer to have only a singleton pregnancy. PGS, or pre-implantation genetic screening, is used much more frequently in surrogacy cycles to exclude abnormal baby embryos, and also to make us only put one normal embryo back into the uterus. One other reason PGS is frequently used is for sex selections. Many of the intended parents want to balance their family or choose a specific sex, and this will have to be done by chromosomal screening. This is how we do the genetic testing. You can see here an embryo, a blastocyst embryo on day 5, where we will take a piece of this embryo, and usually we take a piece from the area that makes the placenta, not the baby, and we can test that these cells to make sure about the chromosomal complement of this embryo. Sometimes we can also test for specific diseases if the parents have a disease that they want to avoid. These are some of the diseases that we can test for, like cystic fibrosis, for example, or thalassemia. When the usual testing for the embryos will look usually at chromosomes, and we want a chromosomally normal embryos because there is a high percentage of eggs, even in young people, that are abnormal already. And we try to exclude these embryos during transfer, so we can transfer one embryo only and get a single pregnancy most of the time. This will also decrease the miscarriage rate due to a chromosomally abnormal embryo. Again, like I said, gender selection is getting more and more common, and some of the intended parents will choose the gender because of social reasons or religious reasons. Some of them will choose the gender to balance the family, and this is available, and usually we will know about the gender during the screening process. When after the embryos are ready, they are usually frozen, and we did the testing on the embryos. The surrogate will undergo treatment. We will have to prepare the uterus to receive the babies. Sometimes we use a natural cycle, and sometimes we use a medicated cycle to make sure the uterine endometrium, or the lining of the uterus, is ready to take an embryo at day 5. The embryo transfer will then be done like you guys have seen on the slide. We will wait around 12 days to verify if pregnancy did happen. And if it did, we will monitor the progression of the pregnancy early on till we achieve fetal viability and have a heartbeat. After we make sure the baby is viable, this surrogate will go to prenatal care and see her obstetrician. And I think Rich talked, very well about the legal aspects of surrogacy. So I will stop here now. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Zeitoun. Thank you, Rich. So I hope everybody enjoy our presentation today. I saw somebody join us late, so you still can find those presentations on our social media, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. So if you have more questions, you can send us your question through the social media or our website. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.